The neighbor. My brother maybe.
Yeah?
It's all engaged.
No,
Yeah, ki Bayom Hazeh yichaper aleichem l'tayreschem kol chanisechem lefnei Hashem titoru. Yeah, on this day, Yom Kippur, the Eibush will be mechaper, be metaher us from all the chatoim, and before Hashem titoru we become tar. Fact that the Rebbe lahavin keifa loshin l'taher and v'titoru. L'taher means that actively the Hashem is metaher us. V'titoru means it's like passive. We will become tar. So what's the double loshin? Tzorach levayir, which the beer is going to be that part of it is what we could do for us. We need to do for ourselves, and then is what the part that the Eibishter does. Momaylo. Yeah. So the Oasis are a little different. The Oasis are a little different over here, but it's basically there's the tahara that since that's that we need to do for ourselves, and then there's the tahara that the Eibishter provides.
Secondary.
Yeah.
Seems that way.
It's also Chav Chasnus, and the Rebbe say, says he did whatever he could. That's more like Momayla. Doesn't mean the Rebbe is stopping to do, but there's the part that we need to do. The last time my father Fabrang, he was talking about this, but the Chav Chasnus and Takas. So someone was asking, how could it be that the Rebbe couldn't bring Mashiach by himself? He needs us to bring Mashiach to Talas Vosar Ken. So he said a story that there was a chassid, a Lubavitcher chassid who didn't have a beard, and the Rebbe wanted him to grow a beard, so the Rebbe asked the Shmuel Witten to speak to him, that he should grow a beard. But the condition was, don't tell him that I said so. So he spoke to this chassid, who happens to be now a relative of mine. I'm married into that family. I'm not going to say who it is, it's not Negeya, but confirmed, the story is confirmed. So the Shmuel went over to him, and he was talking, and the guy didn't give in. So the Shmuel came back to the Rebbe and he said, if you could just let me say that it's from you, for you, I'll do anything. So the Rebbe said, and yeah, there's whose beard should it be? My beard or his beard? So he wants Mashiach to be ours. Okay, Tzorach Levayir. So first we need to explain Inyan Aseres Yimei Tshuva, which leads up to Yom Kippur. What is the idea? V'lama hukba'u asara yomim dafke. What's dafke? The number 10, which you can imagine the answer to that is because that's the 10 svidus, the 10 midas of a person, the 10 koiches. So what's the idea of 10 days? V'hayoyim hazeh hu yom hasidi yichaper aleichem. And the 10th day we mechaper. Anytime we do tshuva, we should be forgiven. So why do we need dafka these 10 days? In other words, it's the question is why the Eibish's mechila seems to be specifically now. Like we could do tshuva whenever. Mechila, what's happens? Ke'inyan hatshuva hu lahashiv panim bepanim elav yisbarach. The idea of tshuva is to return face to face with the Eibush. Kaloi hatshuva hu lashuv lehiskade ve'lav yisbarich. What tshuva means to return and become close again to the Eibush. Uluchoda lo shayach loshin zeh lagabe hakadosh baruch. I could use this term regarding Hashem to come close. Tiksiv bei it's a shemayim v'sodas animol. Why is there a need to come close? How could we ever be distant? The Eibush is always there. So that's the question. Commercial base b'nei adam, like two people. Two people are standing next to each other, but their backs are turned to each other. Listen to this line. There is no greater richuk than that. We were talking about this in the morning. It's not that Alter Rebbe is not exaggerating. What does it mean? If you have two people who are physically apart, fine. So that's a distance. You can measure the distance. And if they don't get along and therefore they leave each other, fine. But then you have two people who are not getting along and they're near each other.
You can stand.
They can't stand each other and they can't look at each other. That's the biggest richuk. Because technically you're right there with it. You can't look, you can't talk it over. No. When Bregas are fam, or his Bregas are me, we can't even look at each other. So ein lo charichu gadol mizeh means you're close but you're far, And therefore, ve'ein kiruv, the only way to bring this close back is ela b'hachazoras ponim al ponim. So by bringing face to face. So what do you gain by this mashal? What do you gain by this mashal? Because the question was that we're always close to the Eibishter. You can't be distant. The Eibishter fills.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So the answer is, you see, begashmius. It's important to understand how the mashal answers the question, because we're just going to go in a circle here. The question is never going to stop. He's saying you have to understand that when you say close and far, it doesn't mean
It's geographic.
geographic. Doesn't mean distance. Close and far is also like an echostic thing. And the Hazeh there makes more sense. We understand that the Eibishter, he's going to explain the whole thing. In the world, the Eibishter put himself in his opposition that, in some places, the Eibishter makes himself more close, in some places more far. And the Hazeh Tshuva is that idea of coming closer when we were far. The Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, you'll see my back. Lo yero, but you won't see my face. So you see again over here. Sheyesh bechinas ponim va'achirayim l'mayla. Just like by a person, he's saying if you turn face to face, that's an union of closeness, of interest in each other. And if back to back is not, by the Eibishter said the same thing. Moshe told Moshe Rabbeinu you can't see the ponim. That's right. You can't have the highest gili, but the achirayim you could uksiv. Another place where you see this is Yoyer Hashem Ponav Elecha. The Eibishter will shine his ponim on the Yidden. Pirush Hashpa Tiv B'chinas Ha'aras Ponim Mipnimius Ritzoyne. That the Hashpa of the Eibishter will be from the Pnimius Haratzin. What's Pshat? How does that indicate it in ponim? Well, first of all, because if you're interested in something, you face it. If you're interested in, giving something to someone that you're interested in, you like, so you face them and you make eye contact and you give it. Also, the word ponim comes from the word pnim. Yeah, in other words, there's a reason for why when you're into something is a show on your face, and you meet the other person's face is because it's coming from your pnimius. But if you're not into it, so you don't have to be. Today, it's come to think of it. Today, this is a challenge because people are so busy looking at their phone while they're walking places, or you're talking to someone, but if you're not facing them, so then there's still a shaila of, are we really communicating? Are we really into this, or you're only doing it b'chitzonius? So Zok, that you find that by the Eibishter, sometimes the Eibishter expresses and says, Yor Hashem ponav ilacha, he'll give the Yidden hashpa from a pnimius. K'dachsev va'oyev is Yaakov. If he loves Yaakov, then it's going to be expressed in giving the Yidden in a pneumistic way. Uksiv, kimachai emche, chulu. Meaning to say that the opposite of Yaakov, the Eibishter doesn't really have an interest. Eventually, he's going to get rid of them. By them, it's mamash from the back. Command the shadi, basar kasfoi, like throwing it over your shoulder. If you have to give it to an enemy, we're not giving it the whole will. A lot of adjectives. The Eibishter gives it to tzaddik, berotzim gomor, ubeha'oras ponim, besimcha, uvetuv leivav, beroiv oiz v'chedva. That's a lot of very descriptive. But that's how the Eibishter gives hashpah to Yidden when it's from a pnimis rotzim. If you have to pay a $10,000 bill, a $50,000 bill to taxes, you do it with one. That's achirayim. You're not really doing it with the simcha v'oiz v'chedva b'simcha. But if you're gonna imagine your kid is buying a house and you have the money, you could afford it. You're giving them a down payment. It's the same amount of money, maybe even more. But you're doing it with a whole parad. So it depends how you want to do it. Okay, now going back, now that we established that by the Eibishter as a like interacts with us either in a pnimius or in a achirayim way, Valderach Zayuvan Gamkin Inyan Tshuva. Kihine Ksiv Kiponu Elai Oidev. So the part of the pshat is they turn their back to me. Ponu Elai, they turn to me, Oidev their back. But the Alter Rebbe teaches differently. Keep pirush, keep pon away lie. Shepoinim may love his body. Bekim teidos mitzvahs. If we are turning to the Eibishter, meaning in his direction, we're doing his teidos mitzvahs. Avol mikol mokim ein zeh ela bebechinas oidif, but we're doing it in a way of our back. She'eino bebechinas pnimius haratzon me ava shuka. Ela mitzvahs enoshim mulamada. It's in a way more like a just habit. V'hoylech bekridus, it's in a cold way, passive. So that's kipon wilai oidef. Tshuva hi achzaras ponim beponim liis pnimis ritzeni v'cheftzei b'teiras Hashem u'mitzvayso b'simcha u'v'tuv leivav merevkel. Tshuva is pshat that the yid gets back to the place of doing it from the kishkas, with the real ratzin. How much goes yeah. I'm just skipping those 3 parentheses. I can read the words. Very much custom is our pasuk Shuva Yisrael v'hina adiyat Shuva she'achzaras ponim beponim kanal de'zanim shakam kimel ma'ila in yasha yachazu faneimai hamavur makmacher safety maschal kisishma b'keil gabe lasois hayoshor. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe established over here is what is Shuva, which, by the way, we shouldn't take for granted. This is one of the big chidushim of Chassidus. One of the tainas that they had on the Baal Shem Tov, Teres of Baal Shem Tov, is that the Baal Shem Tov said that Shuva is for everyone. The Bnei Torah were very offended by that, because Tshuva is for the simple, for the Baalei Aveda. Tshuva is for the Chaitim. What do you think Tshuva is for everyone? And the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe had to defend it and explain it, is that Tshuva is for everyone. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. But we take it as a, we heard that one already. Because what's Pshat? He's saying Tshuva is Pshat, how much of a Pnimius, how much of me, put it this way, not how much Torah mitzvahs am I doing, but how much of me is in the Torah mitzvahs that I'm doing. And there's endless levels to how much we could do that. So we're facing, he says, we're facing the Eibishter. Are we really facing the Eibishter, or are we? That's the thing. That's the chiddush. Because there's endless levels. Yeah, if you want to use the mashal that he's giving. So 2 people, let's say, we're not getting so along, and then they face each other and they talk and they're working things out. There's a lot of layers to how close they could get, and over time, and a relationship builds deeper and deeper, and how much. So you could get more. You could do things with a bigger passion and more chayas, and more. So you think that's pshat tshuva. Tshuva is not a yes or no. I did Aveda, I'm doing a mitzvah. The Aveda mitzvah. It's not a technical back and forth. It's a never-ending process of getting closer. Ach, eich tiye b'chinazu kavua b'nefesh ha'adam. But how could this be something that's permanent by the person? So here it goes off. The rest of this has nothing to do with tshuva, really. This is where it becomes more like not a Yom Kippur subject. It's a daily, day-to-day thing. Tzorech lahaktem tchila maimer azal godol Talmud. So the Gemara has a machlokes. What's greater, Talmud, learning, or Maisa? So that's like a real Yiddish chap, right? What's the question? The question is Gadol Talmud or is Maisa Gadol? What's the answer?
Talmud is also Maisa.
No, is Talmud means studying Torah, sitting and learning Torah. You're learning Hilchas Eglaruf. You're learning that anything in Torah, which is a mitzvah same in a Torah to learn, or fulfilling mitzvahs. Which one is greater? So, Lamdasha answered. The answer is Gadol Talmud. Talmud is greater. Why is it greater? Because it brings to Maisa. So back to square one. Which one is greater? If you do both, then you get both, right? But the Alter Rebbe says is that from here, the Maisa is actually greater. Because what's the whole yichus you're giving to Talmud? That it gets to Maisa. So that's the maskon. Okay, so Tzarech lahagdim tchila maimer azal gadol Talmud shmei v'lidei Maisa. Miklal is from them gedrungen. From here we see shal Maisa hu ha'ikir. But Talmud, sorry, the learning ain't gadol ella b'mashemei v'lidei Maisa. The Talmud's greatness is the fact that it brings to Maisa. Another place is someone who learns with the intention that it's not going to be for Maisa, it's just going to be for learning. Pretty heavy line. Basically, he never should have came out of his mother's stomach. Yeah. That's pretty. Uvidushalmi amru al pasuk. Yishalmi says in Mishnah b'chol chafotzim. all desires lo yishvu ba cannot be equated with Torah. Is that any geschmacke thing can't come close to Torah? Says the Gemara, afilu cheftzei shemayim. Even the desires, it says cheftzei shemayim means things that Hashem wants us to do. Shekol hamitzvahs einan kedai afilu l'davar echad shel divrei Torah.
I always thought that if someone learns the Torah as an instructional, that's when his fetus should have turned over and not allowed him to be born. Here we're saying, okay, someone learns the Torah, and I'm not going to do what I'm learning.
Right.
But we always learned. I remember Moshe Klein says many times in the Sefer, he always says that if someone learns purely as a storybook or purely as something that of intellectual, nothing to do with the instructional.
That's what he said.
It's okay. He's saying
No, that's what he's saying.
He's
He's just learning for the enjoyment of learning. Was he like?
Haloi made shaloi lasos.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. He says that if you're learning it, just you should know how to do things, not for the sake of Talmud Torah.
No, I
That's
don't.
what I
Maybe confusing with something else.
I'm almost sure that's what he says. No? You sure not? You
Doesn't
positive?
make sense.
Yeah, that
The
doesn't
lowest
apply.
level is to learn to live it on las lases. Higher levels is to lishma.
Lishma,
The basic
yeah.
level they're kept telling us to do is to learn to do
Inside?
Unless you're talking about something else. You're talking about Misha, call Misha. What's her?
Moshe always quotes
You're
it.
talking about something. You're talking about. I think you're talking about no. What's the famous one about?
Chayzer
Call Misha ainly elotoida.
I feel it Torah.
Maybe we're talking about that.
No, he uses this lashon that his feet should turn over and not let him be
Ain't
born.
your idea? Maybe I don't know. Does something sounds?
Okay, we'll ask him later.
Ask him. Use it all the time.
So for here we see that what Shemailah says like a Torah. You say that Milas kiyama mitzvahs. He says from this Yerushalmi we seem to see that Talmud Torah is greater because nothing comes close. Even Cheftzei Shemayim, even mitzvahs don't come close to Torah. So it's a problem. The Gemara Shalonu in Ma'id Katan Daf Tesam Beis. The Gemara Damu Kroya Dodi. The Gemara asks a stira psukim. Ksiv b'chol chafetzecha lo yishvuva. Anything that you desire will not come close to Torah, meaning to say chafetzecha v'lo cheftzei shemayim. Mitzvahs are equal to Torah. That's what it seems like from one pasuk. Frek the Gemara ksiv, but another pasuk initially says b'chol chafetzim lo yishvuva. No desire come close to Torah. Afilu cheftzei shemayim. So is Torah superior to anything, even mitzvahs, or is it only superior to our physical desires? The Gemara answered to Mashani kan the mitzvah sheyev shalaso yisla de'achedim. Here it's talking about a mitzvah that can't be done by anyone else, so that mitzvah supersedes everything, all Torah. The kan the mitzvah sheyev shalakayim de'achedim. She mitzvah sheyev shalakayim de'achedim yani chanav yasik b'Torah. According to this, if there's a mitzvah that someone else could do, so let someone else do the mitzvah and you go learn Torah. And so according to this, that's the argument that Talmud Torah is greater. So if you're going to come to... That's the problem with recording these shiur. There's certain things you can't say. So I have to go off record after. Okay. This stira of... You're saying now that Torah comes before anything. Torah. Just heard a story about. Okay, so the story was like this: like a few generations of the Brisker family.
Of what?
The Brisker family. Basically, I think was David Feinstein who was learning by the Brisker Rav, and he wants to ask them to do something. So he said, "I'm in the middle of learning something. I'm just starting to see Hatzloch in the sugi. You could have waited a few hours." So he said, "I'm going to tell you. I was once by my father, by the Chaim Brisker, and they had a big meeting. The Chaim Brisker was, besides being a big Rosh Yeshiva and a Talmud Chacham, he was also into Inyani class. He was by one of these meetings, the big Askin, yeah, very close to the Rebbe Rashab. And by one of these meetings, so someone had brought up a name of, was also a big Askin from the previous generation, older than them. He already had passed away. Something Meisel. I forgot the name. A famous... He was a Rosh Hashiva and he was a big asking. Someone by this meeting, as I blurted out, because he was so much into Askanus, that's why there's no Sfarim from him. He was a big Talmud Chacham, but he was so busy with Askanus that he didn't end up writing this. Like he was being Mavatal. Like, so Reb Chaim got up and he was very upset at this, and he screamed at the whole crowd, and he said like this. He said, "It was a mitzvah she'i efshel asois l'idei achedim." Says like this, mitzvah she'i efshel asois l'idei achedim, and you close your Gemara, and you go do it. So it's like a real brisker where it says the whole time that your Gemara is closed, it's as if it's open. And if you don't go and do it, and you sit in front of your open Gemara and you learn, the whole time you're sitting there, it's as if your Gemara is closed.
So who told who the story?
So Reb Chaim Brisker said it by that meeting.
Oh.
So now the Brisker Rav is telling David Feinstein, I heard my father say this, and I'm telling it to you. You can sit in front of your Gemara now if you want to be Mechadish Chedushim, but your Gemara is going to be closed. So this is more the style that the Rebbe would say all the time also. Mitzvah she'i afshel asay sadeh chedim means that another Yid needs help. Bagashim is Baruchni, is Shluchas, correct, exactly.
Hundreds of times.
Yeah. You know what's fascinating though about that story? The first time that Rebbe said it, the Rebbe said there's a story that has been kept quiet. It was only in Beis Harav. They never repeated the story.
What did he say?
I think Yud Beis, if I'm not mistaken, but
he said it by the first line. I know it's in the first.
They never didn't give details.
How you do
At that point, it was already leaked. The point is because the Rebbe said he didn't want unique and people could take the story. There's even a writer who had written a similar story. This is the famous story about the story. The similar story that he went. Avram Fried sings it from Yom Tov. Anyhow, the Rebbe had written to a writer, you should not put such stories in storybooks because people get the wrong idea and they'll start preaching. Helping another Yid is more important than Yom Kippur, you know. Obviously, which is obviously not the idea. You have to understand, you're talking about the Alter Rebbe, you're talking about on Yom Kippur, you can understand what all that is. And yet, the Alter Rebbe went to help this person because Alter Rebbe understood that it has to be done by him. Anyhow, so that's a good example of a mitzvah. She'i efshel asoy sadeh chedim, but if it's efshel asoy sadeh chedim, if it's efshel, so I can't look for excuses to get away from the Gemara. If someone else could do that mitzvah,
Alter Rebbe could have asked someone to do it.
That's what the Rebbe is saying. That thing had to have been done by the Alter Rebbe for some reason. One of the things, when the Rebbe repeated the story, one of the things the Rebbe said was that there's a halach in Hilchos Shabbos when it comes to breaking Shabbos, it's mitzvah b'gadol. In order that people shouldn't say that, the Nashim Tanim, you know, that will be Machal Shabbos for the Chayil. And the Dafka the Rav has to go and do it to demonstrate how important a Yid is. So the Alter Rebbe had to be the one to do it. Okay, but the question is, and now we're stuck in this conundrum. Which one is, why is Torah so important? Well, any move on. The whole Torah L'chud is only about how we should do mitzvahs. So how is a person going to go ahead and he's going to learn the whole explanation of the mitzvah? It's the strangest thing. You can tell me someone else could do it, fine, but what am I spending my time learning about doing it if I'm never going to end up doing it? Imagine, a guy goes to medical school for years and years and years, and then he goes and shines shoes. So what do you go to learn? So it's a certain place and a certain time, or certain time and a certain place, and certain people. You can't just bring a carbon. How could it be that if I'm learning the halachas as if I brought a carbon, I am a ish zar, I'm not a kohen. So the question is, another question is that how could Torah accomplish this? See, this is the kind of question that's already have to answer. the question itself tells us that Limud Torah obviously has some mile over mitzvahs because it's able to accomplish something that we're missing in Maisa. We don't have a Mizbeach, we don't have a Karbonis, we don't have Koyanim, and yet we could accomplish that through learning about it.
But Rashbi didn't have the mass.
Right, so the Rashbi was able to do it
Right.
without it. You had it right over here. Right? You learned that one? You learned that? Oh, you didn't have the shiur though. You had the shiur for a while, right? Where is it? So good points you're bringing up. He says you had the EF shel vayadav is that b'diber v'chein loy kim rashbi v'yosef ma'ala kama mitzvahs ma'asiyas kanal ela hakel beruchnis l'mayla me'bechina simcha v'basar. So the Rashbi, there's a line over here that it was the Rashbi and other such tzaddikim, and the Bayom said it was our Bayom also. Yeah, that's what the koyach of Torah. Okay. V'yuvan kol zeh al pi bir, top of the next page. Bir inyan mailas ha-Torah b'chlala shehi mitzvah l'kol echad v'echad lilmoid kol hilchis ha-Torah. Afilu halachis she'einam tzrichos l'chol adam. K'goyin dine harais isse v'heter she'einam mesura ela l'moida haras. U'k'goyin mishpatim mishbein ish l'reyeyu she'einam mesurim ela l'dayanim. V'af al-pikein ha-mitzvah hi al kol adam afilu mishe'ein harais l'yiz dayan u'moida Rabbi Yisrael. The mitzvah is to every year to finish learning the whole Torah. So obviously this makes a very strong argument that learning Torah is not just about doing. Because if it was just about doing, then we should only be learning the halachas that are neged to us.
Like Rambam.
This is the Rambam.
Yeah, exactly. We should be only learning the parts of an Rambam that are neged to us.
Not Chakatari and all
The whole even the Sheif. Why are we learning Sefer Sheiftim now? We're not on the Sanhedrin. We're not the Bezdin.
Yeah, I see.
We should be skipping all that if it's not neged. It's a very powerful thing, by the way. But what's the point here? The point here is going to make the whole next two sifim is that when a yid learns Torah, a yid is connecting with the Eibishter.
So it's not only to bring to Maisa, because when you learn this esoteric parts of the Torah, it doesn't bring you to Maisa.
Exactly.
So learning the Torah, it brings you in general to Maisa because you get into Hashem. But the particular halachas that you're learning doesn't help.
Has nothing to do with Maisa, exactly. So it's a bigger.
So when it says that maybe they Maisa, that's not talking about the Maisa of what you just learned. It's talking about in general, you're going to become to.
You're connecting to
It's
them.
not talking about the particular halachas that you learn. You're supposed to learn everything.
Correct. Yes. Good point. Yes. Right. Doesn't mean that the Maisa of those
You learn the
halachas.
tzitzis, you start wearing tzitzis. But you learn something else. It's
Right.
also going to bring you to the day Maisa of in general Maisa.
Right. It's going to bring that the Maisas that you do elsewhere, any other Maisas should be via Starf to say. Yeah. Because it's a very Yiddish value, and without Chassidus, it doesn't. It's that limud Torah is just a good thing to do. I'm saying today this needs to. We have to go back to the basics because there's a lot of craze today about what's the word I'm looking for. People want to know is the learning in school, is it what's the word I'm looking for? Like are they gaining from what they're learning? No?
Academic?
Yeah. Are they reaching
Are they growing?
certain goals and all that? There's a word I'm looking for in business. People always want to see results, right? Results, yeah, progress. Kids, limited Torah can't be measured the same way that other things are measured. Because if Taka, you wanted your kid just to come out with a certain set of skills and knowledge and all that, then in a chanami. But it sounds a little crazy to say, but a person could be learning the whole day and forgetting everything he's learning. When he learned it, he understood, and then forget it. He's mekayim mitzvah. A person could actually hardav Torah and not understand, but he's still hardav. He's doing a mitzvah. It's a value that we shouldn't forget about. That there's an Indian of learning Torah, partial mitzvah, the Indian of learning Torah, not just because we're building a vault of yediyah. There's just value in sitting and learning the Eibishter's Torah. V'inyan hu kihinei ksiv v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela. So this is to make to explain this point of what's accomplished by learning Torah Taka. Just see if we should do this or. Okay, we'll go in order. Everyone could decide if they want to finish it on their own. The last days gets avoided. V'inyan hu kihine ksiv v'hoyu hadvarim ha'ela v'goymer. V'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veisecha v'goymer. So we say this in we have to, right? The Lechora Pirush hadvarim ha'ela. We say that these words should be on your heart. Hainu ha'amurim b'kriyas shema. The Allah koi, because that's what it's referring to. Ube'emes mitzvahs kriyas shema hi b'shachris v'arvis b'lvad. B'lei kol ha'yoyim v'eich noimar v'dibarta ba'am b'shivtecha b'veisecha v'lechtecha cholu. Tamash ma'kol ha'yem v'chol ha'layla tamid lo yechesh bein b'shivtecha b'veisecha bein b'lechtecha b'derech cholu. Ella rather, it's takaze. V'hoyo advarim ha'ela is talking about shema. But v'dibarta bam says the Gemara b'divrei Torah ksiv. You should speak words of Torah wherever you go. That's talking about speak in them is talking about words of Torah. So if so, what's the beginning of you have to when it says that should be all the mashma the koy al advarim amurim l'mayla echad v'ahavta chul. Achini neida pirush milas echad. When we say Hashem is one, what do we mean Hashem is one? Hashem is one and He's not two. Chas v'shalom, what does it mean one? Pshat is shehu levadayu hashamayim va'oretz v'dal adruchos ha'olam k'moi shehoy levadai koidim brias ha'olam k'moi shekosav ani Hashem lo yishanisi. The Eibishter is one is pshat that the Eibishter is unchanged. He's the same Eibishter. Mishum de kula kamei kala mamish chashiv ve'ein ha'olam is tev simakim klal. So when you say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, you say Hashem is one. Pshat is the Eibishter is the ultimate of oneness. What's pshat oneness? Oneness is pshat that the Eibishter. Think about it. When a person you go through a certain experience, you're changed to a certain extent. You're one person before you did it, and after you do it, we say in Kabbanis every morning, Atu Hashem Atu Meshenivra Elam. What's pshat? Think about it. You created something. You're a different person after you created. So the Eibush is Zelda before and after. The whole world doesn't make any change in him whatsoever. What? That's emes, right? Yeah. So echad in this context, that's pshat echad. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Eibush is one. The whole world is the Eibush is everything, and He's not changed. But Rak, what do you say right afterwards? Baruch Shem Kavoid Malchusoi Lo'ilam Voed. That Eibish's Malchus that's where the Eibush comes in a pneumius into the world to be kilo affected by the world. Malchus Cha is Malchus Kol Olamim. Shemebechinas Malchusoin is have Brias O'ilamais Me'ayin Liyesh. That's where his havos is me'ayin. K'maimer yachid chei ha'ilomim melech. So yachid, how does it come to the chei ha'ilomim? Is dafka through melech. The had kol kamei klach shiv hainu kamei dafka. Mashenkin b'chinas malchusoi hu shchinas uzeh shechenes betachteine v'hainu al yedi b'devavis tzimtzumim. This is done through this endless many tzimtzumim sheyein nigla kvoid malchusoi is barich. So now we're going in order. We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Eibush is unchanged. Nervous. The Eibush is mitzamtzim himself to relate to the world, and therefore the third thing is we have to. Esavai lekecha mamish the hainu. This brings out an ava to the Eibush. Liyis ha'ava ru'usa deliba lihibata leilav yizbarich mamish liyis nafshay nechlelas ubetela b'mitzias b'yidin sebarich mamish to kula kamei kula mamish chashiv. Saying is like this: the basic his bonus over here of Shema is the fact that the whole world that we see in front of us is the Eibishter being mitzamtzim himself, but the etzem of the Eibishter is way beyond that. So Avas Hashem in this case means it's the opposite of what Avas Hashem would mean without this. Avas Hashem is kivas elikim li toiv. I love Hashem. Yiddish kind of so geschmack, and what do I really love at the end of the day? I love myself. It's a very idle thing, but let's just say it's simple.
Your relationship with the Eibush.
I love my relationship with David because it works for me. It's geschmack. I'm not saying it's not a. But now that is going to a much higher level, he's saying what's real ahava. Ahava is lashon ova, to want something. What do you want? You want something that's way beyond what's accessible to us. So we think about the whole bria, the whole everything in this world is a product of what the Eibush is tzimtzum after tzimtzum after tzimtzum. The more we think about it, the more we realize, wow, so the Eibush did is way beyond all that. I don't want to get caught up in the secondary stuff. I want the chalai. I want the Eibush. So Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The whole world is what is a bunch of tzimtzum. Baruch Shem Kaveh Melchusay Elohim V'ad. Evazoi v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, to be totally absorbed in a likus. Zeu echad v'yahavta. That's the progression over here. Echad leads to v'yahavta. Shemay b'chinas echad nimshach liyas ha'avo rusa deliba b'nefesh adam liyas havaya mamash lekecha should be in us. Behind while you day. And how is this done? You can think you're gonna go lost on some mountaintop somewhere. No, al yedei eisek ha'Torah. This is fulfilled through learning Torah. Iksiv oita oir kasalma. David wrapped himself like in light like a cloak. Oir ha'Torah oita hakadosh baruch hu kasalma. She'orin zeh baruch hu mamish mislabish ba'Torah. David mamish enclosed himself in Torah.
And you put it in your
and then we get under the same blanket with David did. That's how he says it in a minute. He's going to say we get under the same. Then nemar levushe kitlag chiver. The Eibish's levushim is the white like snow. Kitchilas havayas. It's interesting. The Alter Rebbe doesn't let anything go over here. What's the marshal? Why are we comparing the Eibish's clothing to white? But why do we say white like snow? Yeah, but that's white. But why white like a sheep? Why is he dafka snow? So he says why? Ki Chilas havayas hashela. You don't have a lot of explanations of snow, so this is one of them. This is one of the things that we learn from snow. The beginning, how does snow come about? Who min hamayim comes from water. Shenikadashu, they get hardened, yeah, solidified. Very good. V'nasu shelek. V'achar kach kishenifsher v'nomas chayzer lamayim. Snow melts and becomes water. They build mikvahs like that. People who need rainwater, they can't get it. They can get snow. So I'm saying it's a halacha. It's not stam. It's a reality, but it's halacha is that this is a mashal for understand what Torah really is. Have havoyas levush haTorah, the creation of the levush of Torah, meaning Torah, how we relate to whom bechinas hamayim she bechinas chachmi lo chakim lo b'chachmi dia. Torah is really the Eibish's chachma that's way beyond our grasp. That we should be able to relate to the Eibish's chachma, so that's like snow. We have the Torah the way it's solidified. We could hold it. We could get it. Remember, someone I didn't see it inside. My uncle told me there's a sefer he saw from one of the Rishonim. I think it was Bayom Machir Ben Menashe. And he writes over there that someone had said he can't understand something. He says the Pella is not how you can't understand this. The Pella is how do you understand anything in Torah? That's the. Zeu chachma b'roish v'chachma b'soif. Pshat is that the same chachma of the Eibishter, but there is the way it is in the beginning, meaning at the most purest sense of the Eibishter's chachma. Then is the way it comes down, the way that we can relate to it. But it's the same chachma of the Eibishter. That's the point. The point is, snow is water. When it melts, it's going to be water. When it goes back to its originals. So we have the Eibish's chachma in our mind. Meaning, ksiv sa'areish. I
see this explains even more than that. Here's a double different. You have the Eibishter, you have the snow, and you're taking the Torah, and it's the machshava say the chachmas shel Baruch Hu. So when you're learning, just like Tibbasav, your mamish, it's the.
No, you're right. You're not saying you have the Eibishter and you have the Eibishter's snow. That's not what he's saying. He's using the mashal of snow just as a mashal to understand how you could have something that's the same substance, but in order to relate it on a more tangible level, it needs to be like reconstructed.
And we're talking about.
Not so much talking about snow.
We're talking about the cloak,
the white,
the similar David.
Right.
The
Alter Rebbe goes deeper in the mashal. But Pashas, you say because it's white. The Alter Rebbe goes deeper in the mashal that the
Why
reason
that's the
why he
snow?
compares
The
it
snow
up.
is Mayim.
But saying over here that when you learn the Torah, it's like the Ibsha takes the similar, puts it around you, puts it around himself. It's much more than that. You are right now the Ibsha's machshava. You are machap on the Ibsha's machshava already.
Yeah, but
That's what Chassidus tells you all the time. When you learn the
This
Ibsha's,
is also.
it's not. It's saying that you're being wrapped in the same cloak.
Let's see if you can explain a little more that.
I'm trying to understand because it's different to what we've been taught for years. No?
Yes, serious and serious.
No, but you still only grabbing
That's what
you're grabbing on the bush, but you don't have the whole.
Torah's chachma. And whereas
I think that where we're going off is what you're describing. Let's say Pedekei and Tanya, right? It says that
No.
when you have the
Ein
Eibush's
yichud
chachma in your
k'mayu.
mind, ain't yichud k'mayu. There's nothing you can't get closer than that, right?
Right.
Here he's saying something else. Here he's saying, how does it come b'chlal that we should be able to have the Eibush's chachma in our mind? L'chura, what we have is maybe a mashal, and maybe it's like a make believe, but it's not the. Don't give me a break. It's not the real chachma of the Eibush. I understand though that he's asking on everything you know. Now he's gonna ask you a question.
Oh, so
You can understand the Eibush's chachma?
of course.
It's almost like a little kid
So
playing
it's
Lego.
We're
and
challenging. We're challenging.
Yeah. After all that's explained, you still have left with a question.
Yeah.
So you're gonna build yourself a big gas station in Lego pieces. You're gonna say, oh, now I could run a real gas station because I built one. What's the stack up? Really? It's the same thing? Well, it looks the same way. It's the same. You're missing the point. So the someone could say, or I have a doll and I'm ready to have a baby. It's not the same thing. So he's saying, you missed the. Nishtas is the Eibush's chachma, just like snow is really water. That's why the pasuk uses that mashal. It's really the chachma that we have in our mind is taka muhusa, the Eibush's chachma. Umizeh nimshach gam kain b'teira gashmis shalafenenu liyos gilu b'chnat matzah yisoni. I read that already. Chachma marish chachma zeh. V'nei ksiv sareishe ka'amar nekei. So he says another description of the Eibush's chachma is that his hair is white, like the here Itaka uses the lashon white, like the hair of a sheep. I think what's nekei? I think. So it describes it as white here. Is it white snow or white hair? What's the mile of both? Why do you need two mishalim? Because this gives a different understanding. Another. Elohein hamshachos kol protei ha'halachos shabbatayda. This describes the idea that each halacha is like a hair, different strand of all the details within Torah when it comes down to Ukamesha Kosov Kaptoisov Taltalim Bagoimer Tilim Shel Halachis Shehin Hamshachis Bechinas Saides Bulvad Shehin Bechinas Ha'orda Mitzumtzemes Muetes Ma'at Mizaed Ali Tzumtzumim Rabim Veshenim Ukamesha Kosov Nifleisecha Machshaveisecha Eleinu Ein aroich elecha agida v'adabeira otzmu misaper. Sheliyos hamshoches nifleisecha machshveisecha eleinu be'isek ha'teira shelofenenu hamulobeshes begashmias otzmu misaper hatzmtzumim rabim rivu revaves madregis adein misper. Which goes to the gates. Ke'ein aroich elov izbarich klal. The fact that the when halachas comes down to the details and the details of all these halachas, but that's when it comes. It's very mitzumtzum to come down to all these little details. So it's being related to us. So numbers 1 to 100 million or billions. Is some erech. Why? Shehem yisug echad. 1 and then 2 ones and 3 ones and 1,000,000 ones. Shakal neifel tacha suga mismar. Shenken legabe and ze baruch hu shekem shmekin hu ein soif chulu l'shayich erech klal. So bazoi, how could you say that one little halacha is going to connect us with ein soif? In eksiv salsolo utremamcha. Salsolo utremamcha itaichu. Salsolo is you say it in English, like to
Comb.
comb. It's a type of comb, yeah, like misalsel beside, like to play with the hair to make it to. Peter salsol l'salsel.
Styling brush.
Yeah, well, lahafid hasayde shlo yimurav maval ben karm nazal lo yodu rabbanon ma'isal sol ad shami b'chulu to have a mapech mazik. They didn't know what the pasuk meant until they saw that someone was combing their hair with a comb, and they said, "Oh, that's just silsul." Shahasilsul who beside is lahafridam shlo yehei idav nima b'chaverta, that the hair shouldn't have knots. They shouldn't. The kach sort of lahafrid kol lachish b'gemara shlo yehei idav bilbul ben halacha lahalacha. Combing through it. It's interesting because even in English, you have such a saying. To comb through something means to fine comb. To ask a question is a confusion. Mashani lekashia harebi meir chulu. Shemvaron malabin kol halacha atzmo shleti halacha acheres hiseres isma babelas. Behine bebechina silsul hazek sivu today mamchu. This will elevate a yid. Shenefesh adam is rememes adizet. Lebechina sa'areishe ka'amarna kevu. Hum akoira toira shatoira hirach. Bechinas levush oiter kasam mashenkina. Tzrei mozu. Hilamayla me bechinas levush inagas la'atzmius oira in sevbaruchu mamash. What's his point? Is saying that we're given the Torah in a way that we relate to the Torah in these little details, like these little hairs. He's using the muscle of hair because just like hair can get tangled and you have to work out to detangle them. So every little halacha that we work through, we're getting closer and closer to the etzem of the Eibishter's Chachma. But of course, the Eibishter's Chachma is way beyond that. But every little bit of Torah that we learned, we're relating to that. So he's not talking so much about the yichud of Torah. He's talking about how is it the Torah that we have down here is still so here, and then the next, if he goes on to
Hair is connected to the root.
Eichet, yeah. The point is that the more a person becomes, the next if talking about the yichud of Torah, when a person becomes miyuchud with Eibish's Chachma, and he becomes a shtik Eibishter.
Oh, no. See what you've been missing?
Give us a-